August 2020. Sacramento, California. 9:34 a.m. The auctioneer's name was Mike Patterson. He'd been doing storage auctions for 22 years. Seen everything. Hoarder units, dead animals, mold, hazardous materials. Nothing shocked him anymore. But when he rolled up the door on Unit 429, even Mike had to step back. The smell that came out of that unit hit the crowd like a physical wall. People literally gagged. Some covered their noses and mouths and backed away fast. A few actually turned and walked toward their cars. One guy yelled, "Oh hell no," and kept walking. Mike pulled his shirt up over his nose. "Folks, I know it's bad, but we still need to auction this unit. Someone's got to take it." The crowd, what was left of it, stood about 20 feet back. Nobody wanted to get close enough to actually look inside. Except one person, Sarah Chun, 38 years old, ICU nurse. She'd smelled worse. She pulled an N95 mask out of her purse, the kind she wore at work every day, put it on, and walked right up to the open door while everyone else kept their distance. She shined her flashlight inside. The smell was coming from an unplugged chest freezer in the front of the unit. God only knew how long it had been sitting there with rotting food inside. But behind the freezer, Sarah could see stacks of boxes. They looked dry, intact, possibly untouched by whatever horror was happening in that freezer. She made a decision that would change her life. "I'll bid," she said through her mask. The crowd looked at her like she was insane. This is the true story of the storage unit that made grown men run away in disgust. The storage unit that smelled so bad the auctioneer almost canceled the sale. And the storage unit that Sarah Chun bought for $180 that ended up containing $4.7 million worth of vintage comic books. But to understand why Sarah was willing to wade through literal filth when everyone else fled, you need to know how desperate she was. And you need to know what those 4 days of cleaning that nightmare unit were really like. Sarah Chun was an ICU nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Sacramento. She'd been a nurse for 14 years. Good at her job. Saved lives. Made $78,000 a year. But she was drowning in debt. Student loans from nursing school. $62,000 still owed. Credit cards. $18,000 car loan. $12,000. Her mother's medical bills that Sarah had co-signed. $31,000. Total debt. $123,000. On a $78,000 salary with rent and expenses, she was barely making minimum payments. The debt was suffocating her. She'd started going to storage auctions 6 months ago as a side hustle. Buy cheap units, resell contents on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. She'd made about $3,000 profit over those 6 months. Not enough to make a real dent in her debt, but something. This particular Saturday in August 2020, she went to an auction at a facility on the north side of Sacramento. 12 units up for auction. Units 1 through 10 went for anywhere from $300 to $1,800. Sarah didn't bid on any of them. Too rich for her $200 budget. Then came Unit 428. Sold $4,650. Then Unit 429. The last one. When Mike rolled up that door, the smell was instantaneous. Like death mixed with rot mixed with something chemical. It physically hurt to breathe near it. The crowd scattered. Out of maybe 35 people, only about 10 stayed within 30 feet. Most of those had their shirts over their noses. Sarah worked in an ICU. She dealt with diff infections, necrotic wounds, bile, blood, every bodily fluid imaginable. Bad smells were part of her job. She put on her mask and approached. Through the door, she could see the chest freezer, doors slightly ajar, clearly unplugged. That was the source. Everything near it looked contaminated. But in the back, against the far wall, were cardboard boxes stacked neatly. They were at least 8 feet from the freezer. They looked dry and clean. Sarah's nurse brain kicked in. Contain the contamination, save what's salvageable. Mike was trying to start the bidding. "All right, folks, I know this one's rough, but someone's got to take it. Let's start at $300. Dead silence. $200. Nothing. $100? Come on, folks, someone take this unit off my hands." Sarah raised her hand. $180. Everyone looked at her. Mike blinked. "You're bidding $180? "Yes." "Anyone else?" Mike looked around hopefully. Nobody moved. Going once, going twice. "Sold to the lady in the mask for $180. And I gotta say, ma'am, you're braver than me." Sarah paid. Got the key. Was told she had 48 hours to clear it out. As she walked back to her car, she heard someone say, "That nurse is crazy. No amount of money is worth dealing with that smell." Little did they know, Sarah didn't open the unit that day. She went home and prepared like she was prepping for surgery. She ordered online. Industrial respirator mask with filters, disposable hazmat coveralls, heavy-duty rubber gloves, industrial strength cleaning supplies, plastic sheeting, trash bags. Lots of them. Vicks VapoRub, old nurse trick. Put it under your nose to mask smells. Everything arrived Sunday via same-day delivery. Monday morning, 6 a.m., she went back to the storage unit. The facility was empty. Good. She didn't need an audience for what she was about to do. She suited up. Respirator, coveralls, gloves, Vicks under her nose. She looked like she was about to handle biohazardous material. Which, basically, she was. She rolled up the door. The smell, even with all her preparation, almost knocked her down. Her eyes watered. She tasted it in the back of her throat despite the respirator. But she'd committed. She had 48 hours. And she'd paid $180 she couldn't afford to waste. She started with the freezer. The contents were indescribable. Meat that had been rotting for what looked like years. The freezer had clearly been unplugged when the unit was abandoned, probably 3 to 4 years ago based on rental records. It took her 4 hours to empty that freezer into heavy-duty trash bags. She gagged multiple times. Even threw up once, though thankfully she'd had the sense to step outside first. By noon, the freezer was empty. She'd filled 8 garbage bags. The smell in the unit was still bad, but not nearly as bad. She started on the area around the freezer. Everything within 6 feet was contaminated. Cardboard boxes soggy with freezer runoff. Furniture with mold. She threw it all away. 6 more hours. 17 more garbage bags. By 6 p.m. Monday. Exhausted and disgusting. She'd cleared the front third of the unit. Tomorrow she'd tackle the back section where those clean-looking boxes were. She went home, threw away the coveralls, took the longest shower of her life, and collapsed into bed. Tuesday, 6 a.m. Back at it. The smell was much better now, but still bad. She suited up again and went to work. The middle section was mostly junk. Old clothes, broken electronics, random household items. She threw most of it away. Found a few things worth keeping, some tools, a decent lamp, kitchen items. Then, around 2 p.m. on Tuesday, she reached the back wall. 6 cardboard boxes. Medium-sized, taped shut, labeled in marker. Dave's collection. They were completely clean. No mold, no moisture, no smell. Whatever was inside had been protected from the disaster at the front of the unit. Sarah carefully carried all 6 boxes outside into the sunlight. She sat down on the concrete and opened the first one. Inside were comic books. Lots of them. Each one in an individual plastic sleeve with a backing board. Organized. Protected. She pulled one out carefully. The cover showed Spider-Man swinging through the city. The Amazing Spider-Man number 14, it said. March 1964. Sarah didn't know anything about comic books. But 1964 seemed old. Might be worth something. She opened the second box. More comics. All sleeved and boarded. All from the 1960s and 1970s. Third box. Same thing. By the time she'd opened all 6 boxes, she'd found approximately 400 vintage comic books, all in protective sleeves, all from the 1960s through early 1980s. As Sarah pulled out her phone and Googled vintage comic books value. The results made her heart start pounding. Certain issues from the 1960s could be worth thousands. Tens of thousands. First appearances of characters. Key issues. Rare editions. She started looking through the collection more carefully. Checking issue numbers against value guides online. That's when she found IT'd in the bottom of the 4th box, in a thicker, more protective case than the others. Amazing Fantasy number 15. August 1962. She Googled it with shaking hands. Amazing Fantasy number 15, first appearance of Spider-Man. One of the most valuable comic books in existence. Mint condition copies have sold for over $3 million. Sarah stopped breathing. She looked at the comic in her hands. The condition wasn't mint. There was somewhere on the corners. Some yellowing. But it was in pretty good shape. She kept looking through the boxes. Found more keys issues. Incredible Hulk number 1. First appearance of the Hulk. X-Men number 1. First appearance of the X-Men. Fantastic Four number 1. First appearance of the Fantastic Four. Avengers number 1, first appearance of the Avengers. Tales of Suspense number 39, first appearance of Iron Man. This wasn't just a collection. This was a treasure trove of first appearance issues from the Silver Age of comics. Sarah sat on the concrete outside that storage unit, surrounded by boxes of comic books, and started crying. She'd spent 2 days cleaning up rotting meat and mold. She'd vomited. She'd wanted to quit 100 times. She'd told herself she was an idiot for buying this nightmare unit, and she'd just found what might be millions of dollars in vintage comics. She immediately called the one person she knew who might know about comics, her brother Jason, who'd been into comic books as a kid. "Jason, I need you to come to Sacramento right now. I found something and I need your help." Jason drove up from San Jose, 3 hours away, and arrived by 7 p.m. When Sarah showed him the collection, his jaw dropped. "Sarah, do you know what you have here? These are Silver Age keys. Some of the most sought-after comics in the world. That Amazing Fantasy number 15 alone, even in moderate condition, that's worth at least $500,000. How do I sell them? How do I know what they're worth? You need to get them professionally graded. There's a company called CGC, Certified Guarantee Company. They're the gold standard for comic book grading. They'll evaluate condition and give each comic a numerical grade that determines value." Over the next week, Sarah worked with Jason to document every comic in the collection. They created a detailed inventory, photographed everything. Then they reached out to Heritage Auctions, one of the biggest comic book auction houses in the world. Heritage sent an expert to evaluate the collection in person. His name was Marcus Reed. He'd been authenticating and valuing comics for 25 years. He spent 6 hours going through every single comic, made notes, took photos, used special lights and magnifying equipment. When he finished, he looked at Sarah very seriously. "Ms. Chun, you have one of the finest private collections of Silver Age Marvel comics I've ever seen. Whoever put this collection together knew exactly what they were buying. These aren't random comics. These are specifically the most important, most valuable issues from the era. What's it worth? I can't give you exact numbers without professional grading, but conservatively, you're looking at $3 to $5 million at auction, possibly more depending on how the key issues grade." Sarah had to sit down. Marcus continued. "That Amazing Fantasy number 15 is the crown jewel. Even in the condition it's in, I'd estimate $600,000 to $800,000. The other first appearance issues are worth anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000 each. And you have 15 major keys issues, plus about 385 other valuable Silver Age books. How did these end up in a storage unit? Based on the collection quality, this belonged to a serious collector, someone who knew what they had. My guess? They died, and family members didn't realize the value. They probably just threw everything in storage and stopped paying when it became expensive to maintain." Marcus was exactly right. Through public records, Sarah discovered the storage unit had belonged to David Morrison, a software engineer who died in 2016 at age 68. He'd been a comic collector since childhood. Never married. No kids. His sister inherited his estate but lived on the East Coast and just had everything put in storage. When she stopped paying the storage fees in 2018, the unit went to auction in 2020. Sarah tried to contact the sister. Found her in Boston. Called her. "Hi, my name is Sarah Chun. I bought your brother David's storage unit at auction. I found his comic book collection inside. I wanted to let you know and ask if you'd like to." Oh God, those old comic books. I remember those. He was obsessed with them. "They're not worth anything, just kid stuff. You can have them." I signed off on the storage auction. "Whatever was in there is legally yours." Sarah paused. "Ma'am, I think you should know. The collection is worth several $1,000,000. Silence on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your brother's comic books. They're extremely valuable. Rare first editions. I'm planning to sell them at auction. I wanted to give you the opportunity to make a claim if you wanted." More silence. Then, "Several $1,000,000? For comic books?" "Yes, ma'am." The sister, Patricia Morrison, flew to California a week later. Sarah showed her the collection. Showed her the authentication documents. The value estimates. Patricia cried. "David spent his whole life collecting these. I had no idea they were worth anything. I thought I was just getting rid of junk. Oh my God." Sarah made a decision. "Look, legally, I own these. I bought the storage unit. But your brother spent a lifetime building this collection. How about we split it? 50/50ths. That feels fair. Patricia stared at her. You do that? You don't have to. Legally, it's yours. Your brother clearly loved these comics. He protected them, organized them, spent decades building this collection. I found them by accident. You're his family. 50/50ths feels right. They shook hands. Over the next 8 months, the collection went through professional grading and authentication. Then Heritage Auctions featured it in a major comic book auction. The Amazing Fantasy number 15 graded at 6.5, fine plus. It sold $4.75,000 at the Incredible Hulk number 1 graded at 7.0, fine / very fine. Sold $4.285,000. X-Men number 1 graded at 8.0, very fine. Sold $4.380,000. The other key issues sold for anywhere from $45,000 to $320,000 each. The remaining 385 comics, while not as valuable individually, still sold for an average of $1,200 each. That's another $462,000. Total auction proceeds. $4,723,000. After Heritage's commission and taxes, the net was $3,687,000. Split 50/50ths. $1,843,500 each. Sarah Chun, who'd bought a disgusting storage unit for $180 and spent 2 days cleaning rotting meat and mold, walked away with $1.80 million, but she paid off every single debt. All $123,000. Gone. Bought a house. A small one, nothing crazy. $400,000. Invested the rest conservatively. Set up a trust that generates income. She still works as a nurse. Cut back to part-time. She loves nursing. But now she does it because she wants to, not because she has to. Patricia Morrison, David's sister, donated half of her share, $920,000, to a children's literacy foundation in David's name. She kept the rest and retired comfortably. I ignored my brother for years, she said. Thought he was wasting his life on childish things. Turns out he was building something valuable. I wish I'd understood that when he was alive. The storage facility where Sarah bought Unit 429 now has a small plaque, site of the $4.7 million comic collection, August 2020. Sarah still goes to storage auctions sometimes. She's bought maybe 10 more units since then. Found some decent furniture. Some resellable items. Nothing even close to the comic collection. But she tells her story when people ask. Especially when she's at auctions and sees people walk away from units that smell bad or look gross. I get it, she says. That unit was disgusting. The smell was unbearable. I almost quit 100 times. I threw up. I cried. I thought I'd made a huge mistake. But here's the thing. Everyone else ran away. They let the smell stop them. They assumed that if something smells that bad, there's nothing good inside. They were wrong. Behind that disgusting freezer were boxes that were completely untouched. Clean, dry, valuable. But I never would have found them if I hadn't been willing to deal with the gross stuff first. The lesson isn't buy disgusting storage units. The lesson is that sometimes the best opportunities are hidden behind obstacles that scare other people away. If you're willing to do what others won't, you might find what others couldn't. Sarah's story went viral on social media. She was interviewed by comic book channels on YouTube, featured in articles about storage auction finds. But the interview that meant the most to her was with a local news station. The reporter asked, "What made you stay when everyone else ran away?" Sarah thought about it. "I'm a nurse. My job is to deal with difficult, uncomfortable, gross situations that most people would run from. I guess I just applied that same mindset here. Don't run from problems. Face them. Deal with them. See what's on the other side. And sometimes," she smiled, "on the other side of something disgusting is something beautiful." David Morrison's comic collection is now in the hands of collectors and museums around the world. His Amazing Fantasy number 15 sits in a private collection in Japan. His X-Men number 1 is in a comic book museum in Ohio. His other books are scattered across 3 continents, but they're all documented, all authenticated, all part of comic book history now. And it's all because Sarah Chun didn't run away from a bad smell. If this story made you think differently about obstacles, smash that subscribe button right now. We share incredible true stories every week about people who face impossible situations and decide to push through when everyone else gives up. Sarah could have walked away. She could have let the smell defeat her like it defeated 34 other people at that auction. But she didn't. And her willingness to face what others wouldn't made her $1.8 million richer. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have bought that storage unit? Would you have stayed and cleaned it? Or would you have been one of the people who ran away? Be honest. And if you're facing something difficult right now, something that makes you want to quit, remember Sarah cleaning that freezer while crying and throwing up, but pushing through anyway. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next video where I share another unbelievable story about ordinary people who found extraordinary fortune by refusing to quit.